Europrivacy was developed through the European Research Program. So we started before even the adoption of the GDPR 12 years ago. It gives you an idea of the time perspective also. And it has evolved together with the GDPR and together with EDPB, because when you have a new regulation, such as the GDPR, you need also to enable authorities from 30 countries to come together, to converge and to agree on common interpretation of the regulation, common interpretation of the implementation requirement for the regulation. So the scheme has been, the criteria of the scheme have been approved already 2 years ago by EDPB, about October 2022. So as European Data Protection Seal, to serve as a European Data Protection Seal. But once you have criteria approved, you need to have also the accreditation procedure under Article 43. So we started another round with the European accreditation. So we work with European accreditation, this time not only 30, but about 46 national accreditation authorities to agree on the model, the mechanism for the accreditability of the scheme. And that has led in March this year to an approval, an endorsement by European accreditation of the accreditability procedure for Europrivacy. And since then, we have already one certification body which has completed its Article 43 and has delivered the first certificate. So we just delivered the first formal certificate, European Data Protection Seal, a few weeks ago in Venice on the last day. And we now have quite a number of other certification bodies which are going through the procedure with the national authorities. But it requires for each and every national authorities to implement the Article 43 procedure, which takes time. But we know that some partners of Europrivacy have clients waiting since 2 years to be certified formally. So there is a lot of demand. It's coming, it takes time, but as we say in Italian, chi va piano va sano e va lontano. It means that it was important from the European perspective, I would say. I cannot speak on behalf of the authorities, but I let the EDPB members correct or rectify. But I think there was a learning process for all the parties to understand what does it entail to have a certification, how to make it right, because it's really about building trust, and that's very important. Apart from that, we worked a lot in building an ecosystem, because coming from the research, we decided to focus on our role as scheme owner, and then to make the scheme available for free to qualified partners. So implementers, law firms, solution providers, certification bodies, through a selection process to ensure we have only qualified entities. And we now have the pleasure to have a very top-level ecosystem. We have the largest law firms in the world, including one of the official sponsors of this conference, Denton. I see who is here. We have the big consulting firms. We have the largest certification bodies on board. We have the solution providers like OneTrust and others who came together to say, yeah, let's try to facilitate the implementation. And that's very, very important. And just to give you an idea, we have also quite a number of online resources to support the implementation. And for instance, for the Academy, we have over 1,000 legal experts from all over Europe and beyond Europe who have registered to learn how to use Europrivacy on a professional basis. So really nice ecosystem. Now the next steps will be really to start having certification body accredited under Article 43 to be able to address the market demand. So let me just give you an idea, and that also highlights the vision. When we developed Europrivacy, the idea was not to say, oh, let's develop a scheme to propose a certification. The idea was quite different. It was very much holistic. It was, how can we support implementation of the GDPR? How can we help companies which have not necessarily the best experts in GDPR on data protection regulation? If you have a small SME, how can we help them comply with the regulation? So the whole process was to support the implementation and then the certification and the evaluation of the compliance. So the process is very simple and it's very interesting because it's a kind of natural continuation of the compliance. So what you need to do as a company anyway is to comply with the law. Whether you're a company or a public administration, you need to comply with the law. So you have a lot of work to ensure that you adapt your process, you set in place the adequate organizational and technological measures. Then what you do, you use the criteria to document your compliance. And that is very interesting because even before any certification, by using criteria which have been endorsed and recognized by 30 national authorities, And that's really a lot. It means 30 countries. That's why EDPB needs to take time to really build this consensus, because when you have criteria approved by EDPB, it means that behind it you have 30 national authorities with their own national regulation, with their own history, who agree on common criteria. That this is adequate for each one of our national jurisdictions. So once you use the criteria, you can use them just to document your compliance, to already identify potential non-conformities or blind spots you may have had in your implementation, and then to document your compliance. And by doing that, you already reduce the risk. You can even stop here. You don't need to certify. You already have a nice achievement, which is to reduce the risk for you as a company. And then what is very interesting, and that's something which for us is very interesting because it's a paradigm shift for the compliance of the GDPR, is when you start certifying a data processing, what happens, you can start valuing your compliance. And that's not a marketing term. It's really the possibility for a DPO who is fighting to get some resources to do his work, because his work is perceived as a cost by the board of the company. Usually the board will say, we need to give you something because it's mandatory, but we'll give you the minimum because the money we give you is a cost. It's money we throw away. It will not generate revenue for the company. As soon as you can start certifying the compliance, you change the paradigm, because then the DPO on the compliance becomes a source of value creation, not only for the society, which is the purpose of the GDPR, but also for the company. So it changes completely the dynamic. And that was one of the ideas, to see how to make the GDPR compliance more attractive, more enjoyable, something that any company would like to do it, not as an obligation, but as an opportunity. And then you value your compliance. And then after it, of course, you need to maintain. And the idea, and one of the main objectives, it looks, again, maybe strange or bizarre, but since almost the beginning of the project, we said if you want GDPR to work, we need to make it enjoyable. There is no reason to make GDPR painful. It is important. It is something we should all support. Companies have their own interests, but there is no reason to make it painful for them. So let's make it right and enjoyable. So we worked a lot on the process to make it as efficient as possible. And what is very interesting, and that's something which is also something to realize, and I think we will realize it more and more in the years to come, that if you look in terms of effort for the company, the most effort, the largest effort is for the compliance. It's before starting the certification journey. So why you need really to invest a lot of energy is to comply with the regulations, to adapt your procedures. Once you've done it, you still have some work to do to go through the certification, but what is really nice at the next step, the documentation, you already reduce the risk. So you have already a return on what you will invest for the certification. And then once you start certifying your compliance, you start valuing your compliance. And there is a really virtuous evolution. That's why we are quite confident that in the future, certification will be something more and more common, because it's a kind of natural way to move from all the sweat and effort to comply with the regulation to being able to value what you have done, to recognize the work of the DPO. Not only to call the DPO when there is a data breach, but to give the positive side of the DPO, to say how much value it creates for the company to anchor the compliance in the DNA of the company, in the culture of the company, in the process, in the design approach.